Hello and welcome to Screen Junkies Universe. It's going to be a great show today, and I'll tell you why. I have the amazing Danielle Radford with me.
Hello.
I have Spencer Gilbert. I'm Roth Cornet, but that's not important. What's important is we have a very special guest today, Boots Riley, director of the upcoming Sorry to Bother You, starring Lakeith Stanfield and Tessa Thompson. This opens on July the 6th, limited and then wide on the 13th. You are going to want to see this movie. You are going to want to see this movie. We will get into that, but first we're going to get your expertise as a director, a creator, on a little bit of entertainment news that's been popping up. So The Hollywood Reporter has been talking about Walter Hamada taking over for the DC film franchise over at Warner Brothers. And one of the things that's popped up a ton is different versions of a Joker movie. One of them that has been, one of them that's been frequently discussed is a sort of gritty crime version of the story starring Joaquin Phoenix. That is separate from what we've seen so far from them. And it's been revealed that this is expected to begin shooting in the fall. There's also another one featuring Jared Leto, who starred in The Suicide Squad as the Joker. This is budgeted at $50 million. Now, the interesting thing is when this came up this morning, my producer and I both were elated by the idea that it was $50 million because for Warner Brothers, that's a relatively modest budget, which makes us think, could this actually be interesting? Do you think it's a strange place we've come to in entertainment that we're more excited by films that have smaller budgets to begin with, even if they're ostensibly a big
Because
studio
we
film?
know what they're going to spend that higher budget on, stuff that we don't want to see. Like, they're going to spend it on, like, having Spider-Man blink and look stupid, you know.
With CGI, like the fake island.
You know, so the lower budget means that they have to, hopefully, I think people hope that it means that the story has to be better.
Yeah, because it's relying on the story, not the flash and the flourish, right?
Doesn't mean it will be, but that's the hope, I think.
Right, and when there's that much, when you're in like $100 million plus budgets, it's just like an investment, and people are like looking for like, how can we maximize our ROI on this feature film product?
So they're people who aren't writers or directors are having their hands in it more. I mean, a larger budget could mean something great, like they get to spend more time on the scenes and the take. Thank you very much.
We're good. Thanks,
good.
Ryan.
Wait, Ryan.
Oh man, we're live.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks a lot.
Ryan is our new Parker. He's our CS manager. Thank you for the coffee.
Yeah.
So please continue.
You know, it could mean that they spend more time and get to do more takes if there's action or whatever, but it also means, I mean, there's some of these movies that are, you know, people are loving and in certain cases and have cost a lot of money and are making the money that the folks thought they were going to make. However, you're looking at it and you're like, that looks just like CGI. It looks like they're filming that on a soundstage. But we've just come to accept it because, like, this is like what they do. Like, instead of like flying people to a location, they've got like grass and wind in the back that they had a B camera unit go shoot while the actors are right there, and it ends up costing more than it might have cost to, you know, like actually go there and film it or whatever. And but you know, we're willing to, because we've been looking forward to the movie for so long, like suspend, you know, our disbelief and look at it. I don't know. I'm not one of those people that are just like CGI sucks no matter what. But one reason that it sucks is that you know, you can. It has made it to where you can do anything you want to do. You can make, you know, a skyscraper, stand up, walk over and take a shit, and then walk back and sit down.
I would watch
that if it was in context.
Yeah,
The Rock's in that one. I've seen that.
But the point is that we're not amazed by it anymore because we know some dude sat there, a few people sat there behind a computer.
900 people in Eastern Europe.
And made that happen. And we don't have to think about how did they do that, or it also, like with music, I always got to the point where, like, there's a way where you could just plug in a guitar straight into your laptop and put plugins on it. Sounds like there's an amp, sounds like it's in a room somewhere. But I think there are things that we don't yet, this is with sound, that we don't yet know about sound that you can't recreate yet. And so for me, even when doing something digital, I want it to hit the air first, to do whatever it's going to do, and then get digitized. Same thing with effects. I feel like something that's practical, that's happening in a place somewhere, like there's something about it that makes you feel like it's there. Even if you then, you're slapping stuff on top of each other, but to make it all seem like it's happening at the same time, you still have this spatial recognition that maybe we're not able to duplicate with CGI yet, and it just feels like it's there. Like you like someone, like you said, 900 people have spent 6 months making that building stand up and shit, and we're just like, okay, cool, what next? You know what I'm saying?
What else is that building gonna do? I have ideas.
But yeah, the best of it combines, I think, the both mediums, like Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
Like most of what's on screen is real, but they're using CGI to like accentuate and to just kind of add on in a way. You can't replace like physics and gravity. Something about it just doesn't quite click.
Yeah.
Well, it's inorganic. I mean, I think, and not to overuse that term, but I think that's maybe what it feels like in terms of the structure of the story as well. There's a disconnect, and as the audience, you can feel it. You can feel if people are invested or not in the actual story. I mean, has that been your experience just as a film viewer over the last 10 years in particular? Because your film feels almost like an answer to what we've seen with the big studio films being incredibly repetitive, predictable, well-structured, but repetitive.
Yeah, like, don't go in there and pick up that red hat. Whatever you do, hey, I heard that if you pick up the red hat, things happen. And then all of a sudden the person's in the room with the red hat. You're like, okay, I knew what was going to happen in this. And, and plus they called it the Don't Pick Up the Red Hat movie. And,
and it's in the trailer. You see the shot in the trailer, they're picking up the red hat.
So it's, I think we get tired. There's something to structure that is great, like rules, confinement, that allow you to maybe show some creativity. And as a viewer, you're like, okay, I know the rules by which this director is sticking to. Let's see how they can dance in between those rules. And then you can compare the two people that use the same rules and say, well, this person was better. But after a while, that still gets boring, and you want to not be able to guess what's going to happen. You also want to be able to engage in a different way. For me, I want people to be off-center and not know when is a good time to go to the bathroom,
The bathroom, and it's so funny because we listened to a Q&A with you last night, and after seeing the film, and the bathroom conversation legitimately comes up. There were so many people what was the last movie that the bathroom conversation? Infinity War, Avengers: Infinity War. People were truly sharing online moments. When can we go to the bathroom because it just doesn't matter? And isn't that like fascinating? I mean, just in this 1 week, like Ewan McGregor is out. He's playing Danny in the Shining sequel. What is really the purpose in your mind of film as compared to what we often? And there's nothing wrong with big Hollywood movies necessarily. There's many that I enjoy. But what for you is like the purpose of film, and how are these movies fulfilling it or not? I'll start with an easy one with that one.
What is film for?
What is film for?
Why movies?
No, but really, because it's like is it meant to spark you or is it meant to soothe you?
Well, I mean, I think art has. I think art is communication, and what we're getting, even though we don't necessarily aren't aware of it, we're getting someone communicating ideas to us about how the world is, how it should be, whatever. And often film is used like to just make us accept the way things are. Like, you can't fix it. And that's not because of some conspiracy, but that's just because that's what the filmmakers believe, right? Like, you this is what it is. There's all sorts of ways to think about it and ways to deal with just the way it is. And then there's other art that, which I hope to be part of, that puts things forward like, okay, here's the way it is, and you have a way to change that. And so it comes out a little bit more optimistic. So I think film often ends up becoming, unfortunately, just cosigns of the status quo, cosigns of the way things are. Like, when we think that we're putting different things into movies, speaking of like DC, like they had during the Occupy thing, they put all the Occupy stuff in the Batman movie. And instead of using it really as a critique of, power and how police are really just protecting the rich, they used it as the opposite way. And there was probably nobody like in a room being like, wah, but that's just the way that the filmmakers believed. That's what they thought. And so it's for getting across an idea, I think. It doesn't have to be for, but is it going to soothe you? I don't know. It depends on what. I don't know. I don't want to make art like that. That's just to relax. I hate like easy listening jazz. Like, what the hell is that for? I don't want to see a movie version of that.
But it's so smooth.
Like, if you are someone that has spent years learning how to play the saxophone to make people go to sleep, it's bad, So I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
films.
that obviously these movies fall into like two categories. Largely, just speaking for myself, it's like superhero movies, especially, they're modern myths, and they're like reaffirmations of these myths that have been basically like told around a campfire of like the great conquering heroes to like make you just feel comforted and like know your place basically in society. And then there's movies that are like expressions of individuals, and that's always a little bit more exciting.
For your film, one of the things that we all talked about this morning was it defies categorization. It's very difficult to talk about without spoiling it, which we don't want to do, because one of the really great pleasures of it is that you don't know what's going to happen, and it throws you 4 or 5 times.
My jaw, I don't like, they say jaw dropping like just a stock phrase, but like that happened multiple times. I can't believe that just happened.
Cool.
I'm sort of fascinated by, and Danielle weigh in, like, just by the process, of what made you think of that? What was the elevator pitch to get the money to make it?
Yeah. Well, the elevator pitch is, I have an absurdist dark comedy with magical realism and science fiction, inspired by the world of telemarketing. It's called Sorry to Bother You.
Here's your check.
Here's your check, yeah.
Here's all the money
Sold.
from the president of Hollywood.
So yeah, it's what I do with writing lyrics in the first place is taking big ideas and putting them down into condensed form in order for people to inhale them. And so pitching for this was not a problem, but part of the problem is that the pitch in and of itself, when I tell the story, it was like, okay, what should have been like, wow, I've never seen that in a movie before. People being like, I've never seen that in a movie before, though.
So a lot of kind of fear of like, oh, this is different, it's scary.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, people are putting in. It's like any bet. Like people are putting in a bunch of money, and they want to be able to say that this is safe to do.
It's like blank, but with blank. Like
Yeah.
they want to have some kind of anchor to sell it to people.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like, well, also so that they know, like, because one of the things is, yes, this is a movie that takes risks, but part of taking risks is failing sometime too. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to be willing to do something that that isn't proven.
Yeah.
And so it takes messing up at certain points. And when you're talking about, even with the thing like this, which is a few $1 million, still a few $1 million.
Yeah, I don't have that.
So, and
That is $3 million more than I have.
and so so that's the hard thing to do. So I had to build it up around other things, like Sundance got behind it early on, and brought me to the labs. So that made people think, wow, okay, if this is good, maybe it will get into the festival, which is not always a given anyway. Then then I was able to use the Sundance stuff to get notable actors interested. So then I could be like, we have a movie. And the truth is, with our cast, they're the 2018 Rat Pack. You know, as long as the movie's not bad, people will want to go see
I think
them.
that's true.
I mean,
Yeah.
for people who don't know, it's Tessa Thompson, Lakeith
Yeah.
Stanfield, Armie Hammer. Who am I leaving out?
Stephen Yeun,
Stephen
Yeun.
Yeun.
Terry Crews,
Yeah.
Danny Glover.
The voice of Patton Oswalt and David Cross.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, was that a spoiler?
No.
No, that's in the
That's
trailer.
in the trailer. I'm sorry. I just don't want to. I just want people to go in blank, you know,
Yeah.
and just have the experience.
Yeah, don't watch the
typically.
trailer if you're committed that you're gonna go see it anyway. Then don't watch the trailer.
Yeah. I mean, I was sold. I think also. I mean, I wanted to see it based on the marketing, but I was sold on the cast. If I'm honest as well.
Yeah, and even from the trailer that you aren't supposed to watch, you can see, but you can see stylistically how different it looks and feels from anything I've seen.
I wanted to create because for instance, there are movies that I stylistically love that are recent, and I might not like them as a whole movie, but I like their style. But a lot of what has been popular in like indie movies that are stylistic is like this clean thing, you know, bold colors, but like everything is clean and neat. It's like, you know, like when Pro Tools first came out or whatever. And
Auto-tune.
yeah. And so I wanted to do something that felt, to me, closer to real life, that was messy.
Yeah.
And, but like beautifully messy and cluttered, that felt like the world, and felt like trying to find, you know, like right here is a mess of a whole bunch of cameras and like wood over there. It just doesn't look as good that way.
Never does.
Why are you
Never
telling
does.
our secrets?
But like there's a way to like make it have that same feel and be beautiful and look that direction, and that's what I tried to do with not only that, but with the story structure, with the and to in that way, like making you feel like there's a lot to look at in the world and a lot to experience, and also keeping folks on their toes.
So my mind immediately wanted to categorize it. It was funny. I was having like a conversation as I was watching it going, oh, you know, it almost feels like Andy Kaufman plus Michelle Gondry, but it is. And I thought that word, I was like, it's messier than that. And so I was delighted when you said that you wanted it to be beautifully cluttered, because that is really what it feels like when you're watching it. I wonder if you guys thought that, or what your response. Did you find yourself trying to find a way to say it's like this thing?
It's Spartacus meets Seabiscuit.
Well,
Yeah, like it's definitely for me, I'm the same way, where my brain's like, how do I explain this to people who are going to ask me what I thought without, and finding a way to do so in such a way which, again, does not give away the things about the movie that are important. And I did try to think of like, well, what would I, and there's nothing, you know, and I guess that's also, we're talking earlier about tropes and things like that, which obviously tropes are useful. I have lost entire days on tvtropes.com or .org or whatever it is, just kind of going through and reading all the tropes. But when you do come across something that is not as easily put into, oh, this is that trope, this is that, it does leave you, as you were saying that you were hoping for, it does leave you kind of like, it knocks you off your balance.
Well, one could hope that this is like, it's a Boots Riley movie.
Right, yeah.
Are you, was this a positive experience? Do you want to keep doing it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I started out in film school and quit when we got our first record deal. And so I've had 20 plus years of movie ideas. I've got 20-something ideas, and maybe 14 of them are great. And so I have...
That's a good percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Do you want to share a few?
No.
Okay.
Gotta do the work.
Yeah.
It's a sequel to The Shining. Or it's a Joker movie.
It's a Joker movie, isn't it? Which DC character do you want to do next?
Oh.
I'm kidding.
If someone offered you like $100 million movie, would you take it? Some comic book movie?
I mean, how much money do you need?
I don't know.
Wow.
In life, do you mean?
Yeah, like, I mean,
Haven't they
once
done
I
that
get everybody,
research?
have people in my family taken care of, then I can do that by doing my own movies.
Yeah.
Once you're spending a certain amount of money in your life, then you now are only hanging out with people that can also spend that amount of money. And it's not what it wouldn't be what I would want to do. I would so that wouldn't be the thing for me. Like right now, I've gone through so many years of being broke in order to do the kind of art that I want to do. Like broke, like last year my electricity got cut off, and a couple years before that I was 10 months behind in the rent. So why would I have gone through all those years of doing that if it's just like, whoa, now I got a check and I can, because I could have done that a long time ago and then not suffered. And so now I have a chance to do the movies that I want to do, which could be something that has to do with a superhero world, but probably not a DC or Marvel one, and definitely not from any of the perspectives that that films are used for. That superhero films are used for. Put it like this: a superhero film is probably the only film where, and I said this in the New York Times interview, just in case people are like, oh, he's repeating himself. But the superhero film is probably the only film in which people are rooting for the bank robbers to lose.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
We're usually rooting for them to get away with it.
Because that's the truth in life. Between banks and the bank robbers, we know that the bank robbers are the good guys. Superhero movies are out to tell us to root for the banks.
They never do
I
follow-ups
have
on the people
never
that...
thought of it.
They never follow up on the people Batman breaks.
Yeah, they don't follow.
Or
on
the
that.
fact that why, like who is if you take a bigger look, who's the real bad guy?
Yeah.
Right. Which is, and when they do it and when they nail it, those are the villains that we love. Like with Vulture, Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming, who his story was so compelling because he did just keep continually being crushed by life. And finally he was like, oh, I'm done. Like I've got to take care of my family.
And you understood why he was mad at them.
And they have a little bit of that sometimes, but it still is like
Right.
they have a little something off, and which is why they would even think about not just doing what everyone else is doing. Like they have, and the truth is we all have something off in us. And but by them being the only one that's shown as more human in those errors, then that's the reason why they would not be down with the superheroes. So I mean, is Elon Musk a great guy or not? I don't know. However, Marvel Universe thinks he's a hero, and they have a certain viewpoint on that. Wrong or right, they have a viewpoint, and we are looking at it as if it's just games.
That is fascinating. I know we're going to have to wrap it up, unfortunately, because that is a fascinating line of thought that we will continue to explore. I wanted to ask and give you guys the opportunity to ask a final question. Mine is really circling back to what you talked about because I found myself really empathizing for a number of reasons, with Cassius, who's Lakeith's character. But in this sense, he found this thing that he's really good at. And in order to continue to do it, he has to betray his own ideals. Mm-hmm. That is very human. Mm-hmm. That is very, very human and a very difficult decision to make.
All the ad people out there who could have been amazing artists that affected the coming generations of art and human conception of life, that are instead figuring out which font will make you buy more Cheerios, understand that feeling.
Wingdings.
I worked in advertising.
Yeah. I mean, we all done. I mean,
yeah, you used to make Mideast documentaries, Roth.
I started out by making social issues documentaries, and then I worked in advertising. Anyway,
well my whole point is everybody in this movie. There's nobody in this movie that isn't quote unquote selling out.
Yeah.
That isn't part of the and also. Everybody, there's nobody that's bad or good. I mean, there's one guy who, maybe, but even the way that we played him, I think is a little bit more realistic. But I think that's that way in life. I was able to write this movie because I definitely am there at all sorts of times. Like the problems with this system aren't each other. The problems with this system are, ones that have to do with our economic relationship to each other. And so, therefore, I'm writing characters that are not all one way or another, and it's more fun to write those sorts of characters, and I think it's more real to write those sorts of characters. And so I lost what I actually was going to say.
No, we followed.
That's great. Yeah.
We want to thank you so much for joining us today. You guys need to see this movie, Sorry to Bother You. Opens on July 6th in limited theaters. If you can't find it then, you'll wait till the 13th where it goes wide. But you should definitely check out this movie. You're going to want to talk about it. We'll talk about it some more. There's a special movie fights today. It was pre-taped featuring Rob Corddry. That will be on at 4 on the Screen Junkies main channel. Want to give you guys a chance for final thoughts before we go to our next segment. Stay tuned for this next segment.
Oh, I thought you tied a beautiful little bow on.
Yeah,
okay, great.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, no, it was perfection. Lakeith Stanfield also is an actor in The Girl in the Spider's Web, which is coming up in November. I had the opportunity to talk to him and some of the other actors on that set in March, and we have a report from that set visit coming up at you right now. Thank you so much. Do you are on Twitter? Do you like people to follow you, things like that?
Boots Riley. I mean, that would be weird to have a Twitter and not like people to follow.
Sure, that would be really weird.
It's my burner account.
Yeah, everything Boots Riley, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
All right, great. Well, follow Boots, see the movie. Thank you so much, and watch. Stay tuned to hear more about the upcoming reboot of Lisbeth Salander right now. Lisbeth Salander. I always say salamander.
So this is cool. You got to go on the set of The Girl in the Spider's Web. This was, what, a year ago?
This was actually in March. So
okay.
You're right. Most of the time with set visits, it takes about a year. Sony, who is releasing the picture, is doing this a bit earlier, which is kind of interesting. The movie comes out in November, and we visited the set in March. in Berlin. It was freezing cold, but a really amazing experience overall.
So these were your spy missions?
These were my spy missions, yeah.
So this is not necessarily a sequel to Girl in the Dragon Tattoo. This whole franchise is kind of, there's been films overseas. We had one over here. It's a series of books. Where does this one fit?
So the Millennium Series was by Stieg Larsson, and there were 3 Swedish films leading up to this one: The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. And then there was the David Fincher, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, with Rooney Mara and Daniel Craig. This is kind of a reboot of all of that in a number of ways. First of all, this book, The Girl in the Spider's Web, was written by David Lagerkrantz, who basically took over after Stieg Larsson passed away. So he's now writing the series of books about this character, Lisbeth Salander, who is now played by Claire Foy, who you guys probably know from The Crown. She's been in a number of other things, and her career is really taking off right now. But one of the things that everybody sort of noted was how drastically changed she was on the set, not just in terms of, like, if you can see that she's, the day that we visited was the sequence right there, the opening sequence in the trailer that's been released, where she is tying that guy up upside down. She has this white paint on her face that looks like a mask. And this is the reveal in the movie where you come to understand that she's sort of like this vigilante that goes after people that are hurting women. What Claire Foy said and what Fede Alvarez said was this is kind of like Lisbeth's growing up. In the previous versions, she's been coming into herself. Now she's there. So in this version, she's had this affair with Michael Blomkvist, but they've broken up. She's sort of over it. He's sort of maybe still into a little bit. But what really happens is that they're closer in age. So it's not about this like older man, younger woman relationship that is kind of a mentorship relationship anymore. It's peers. At the start of the film, he's having trouble at the magazine. It's been bought by a different company. They kind of want to do clickbait. He doesn't want to do that. So he's chasing the story, and he enlists her to help him. But the thing is, the story about these hackers also connects to her past, to her family, to her childhood, to things that have not been, that she even has repressed. And we come to understand basically how she became the girl with the dragon tattoo.
So this is directed by Fede Alvarez. He did Don't Breathe, which I absolutely loved. Does this kind of have the same kind of horror vibe, or, you know, what is he bringing to this that's a little different?
He talked about that a lot, and he's known for horror, and so he talked about sort of using tension to build and have it be scary in the sense of the mystery is unfolding and she feels like things are closing in on her. And he says that he also has kind of themes that he's playing with in his movies. One is guilt, and the other one is this idea that there's a door and everyone's afraid to open this door. And some filmmakers might postulate that if you walk through that door, it's going to be not as bad as you think. Maybe it's this wonderland. For him, it's that if you walk through the door, it's so much worse than you think.
The optimism of the series.
But that if you make your way through it, then you'll be so much better off on the other side. So the door is her past.
Yeah. So when you were there, what did you actually get to see them shoot, or what footage did you get to see?
So we saw, like I said, that opening sequence where she's hanging the gentleman upside down, and basically you see the whole thing in the trailer, and that she's essentially blackmailing him to leave his wife alone, and she's getting some money to some women that he was abusive towards. So you see, I saw them filming that sequence, and then saw some footage of an explosion that you also see in the trailer, where she runs into the bathtub to...
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, to sort of like cover herself from the explosion. So saw that, saw a bunch of the costumes and footage of her on motorcycles and things like that. And you got a real sense of who the character is, which is interesting because one of the things that Fede Alvarez said that he liked about this was Lisbeth is really unlikable. She does not want people to approach her. She doesn't behave the way normal people do, and this is a little bit about why, because she's very, very damaged. But he talked about how Hollywood always wants these really likable characters, and that's a lot of times less interesting.
Right. So, besides the director and Lisbeth, who else did you get to talk to on the set?
We spoke to Sverre Gundersen, who plays Michael Blomkvist, and if I've said any of that incorrectly, please forgive me. He was great in Borg McEnroe as Borg. If you saw that movie, he was wonderful in that film. He's playing the younger version of the character in this movie. He also, interestingly, was friends with the actor who originated the role in the Swedish films, who passed away recently. So he said he felt sort of like the weight of taking it on. We spoke with Lakeith Stanfield, who you might know from Atlanta. He was great as well. He plays an NSA agent who is chasing her down, but as hacker, they have a budding respect for each other as those who know hacking. And then Sylvia Hoeks, who you know as Love from Blade Runner 2049. And I'm very hesitant to spoil anything because she's a really, really interesting character, and how she relates to Lisbeth. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
I mean, yeah, the trailer for this looks awesome. I'm really excited. This vigilante ass kicker with a dark past. It looks like a really cool movie. Sounds like you had a really good time there.
It was so fun to be in Berlin. It's got so much film history. If you are a movie fan, we were on the Babelsberg studios where Metropolis was shot. If you're impressed with that, I am. I went to the Berlin Film Museum while I was there, which was amazing. Again, the history is so incredible there. The movie looks cool. She is remarkably transformed. It's very hard to tell from a set visit exactly what the final result will be, but the intentions are so high, and the footage I saw and the performances, because you can really see a lot if you're watching actors on the day, right? Like, I visited sets where you think, oh, and then you see the movie, and the editors have done a lot of good work to make them look good. In this particular case, Claire Foy was completely arresting, even just watching her in that little scene. And Fede Alvarez talked about her as a performer and said it was interesting that as a director, he would watch her do a take and go, did she do what we talked about, or did she? And then he would look back and go, no, it's all in her, and so subtle in the eyes, knowing that it's going to be projected. Her eye is going to be the size of a human once it gets on the big screen, and she's doing all the work just very subtly. But I could even see it that day, so I'm very interested to see how it all comes together.
Okay, well, you sold me. How long do I have to wait before I can go see this?
Comes out on November 9th.
Ah, so far away.
So far away. Lisbeth Salander.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.